Hello Ranger Point Precision friends and family, and a special howdy to all you space cowboys. In today's video we're going to be covering the installation of the handguard on the Rossi R95. This video is actually going to cover two different models of handguards because the process is the same all the way up to a certain point. If you have the M-LOK handguard, you will stop at that minute marker and go ahead and enjoy your installation. If you have the Costa handguard, you're going to continue on and we're going to cover how to mount a gator rail. So let's get into this. First thing we're going to do is we are going to check and make sure our firearm is not loaded. We are visually going to look inside the chamber, look inside the magazine tube, and then we're going to check and make sure that there is no ammunition anywhere around us. Not on the table, not in our wingspan. So what will we need? Well, one thing we're going to need is a non-marring hammer. The next thing we're going to need is something to support the barrel. This right here, there are armor's blocks and all sorts of blocks on the market. This right here came from Galloway Precision some time ago, and all it is a hockey puck with a groove and a hole cut in the middle. Then we're going to need an assortment of flathead screwdrivers. The next thing we're going to need is our package that comes with it, with our hardware, Loctite, and a few little other tools. Let's see what's in here. Now that we've unpackaged our hardware, let's go ahead and make sure that we have all of it. We've got some Loctite, 2 pieces of sandpaper, and a tenon. Now this is very important, this tenon. Lots of guys break this tenon. If you do not sand this tenon, when you're installing it, you will break it. Right here, we have got 2 offset washers. We have got 2 screws that go through the side of those washers. We have got 4 handguard set screws. These handguard set screws go in the side of the handguard and just touch off on the barrel. Then, just in case you guys don't have it at home, we have got a couple of included Allen keys that fit all of this. So now that we've checked and double checked that this thing is unloaded, there's nothing in the chamber, nothing in the mag tube, we owe that to ourselves and those around us. The first thing that we're going to do is remove this end cap. Now this end cap is held on by 2 screws. There's one on the ejection port side and one here on the back side. We're going to take an appropriate sized screwdriver tip. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. We're going to remove the first screw, set it aside. We're going to roll it over and get the other side. Set that one over. Now our end cap will pop off and the end of our handguard, our factory forearm here, will just pop loose. We're not ready to remove it yet. So now what we have right here is a screw that holds the magazine end cap. So that magazine end cap, this screw does 2 things. It holds the end cap and it keeps the mag tube secured to this stand that's in the dovetail here. So now we do not want this end cap to fly. It won't fly just yet until we go to pick up on the mag tube. When we pick up on the mag tube is when we come in under our spring pressure and our end cap here and our spring wants to go. So we're going to set our spring aside and let's go ahead and pan out so we can get a better view of what's going on. So now at this point we have got a loose end cap, we have got a loose handguard, and a loose mag tube. So we can go ahead and take this and pull this on out. And keep in mind there is a follower that is going to be hanging right there. You can just leave that all together. Now we're going to remove our end cap and set it to the side. We do not need it. And then also note there is a bulge in the back side of this, and that is so that the ammo can come in and clear. So we're going to have to remember to keep this bulge turned a certain way. So now for this part we need our non-marring block and a hammer. So the reason we need this is because of a spot weld. There is a spot weld that Rossi puts in their factory tenon. Let me show you this. So now this one actually has a very light spot weld. I've seen some of the earlier models that were fully involved on both sides. But what we're going to do is we're going to break this spot weld by using our barrel block and hammer. So we're going to roll this over. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit it from one side. Then what I like to do to break that spot weld evenly and not cause any jags in our dovetail here, smack it from the other side. And all I do is I go from one side to the other, back and forth, until it finally breaks out. So that feels like we've moved from one side to the other there. So now you can see the one on the right is a much beefier tenon. This is the one we provide versus the black little one from the factory. So what we wind up doing is we have to sand this down just a little bit because not all dovetails are the same. So this is actually shipped a little bit oversized because, as you can see the little dovetail by my finger there, they're all machined differently. So now you can see this barely fits into our dovetail. That's because the tenon again is oversized, and we're going to have to remove just a little bit of material off the back side of it. In the package are going to be 2 pieces of sandpaper. And what we're going to do is we're going to wind up sanding the back side of this tenon until it goes in somewhere around 1/2 to 2/3 of the way with no tools. So now this is the back side of the tenon. This is the part where we're going to be removing material with our sandpaper. So we're just going to go in a little back and forth motion, removing just a little bit of material and then test fitting it in between each time we remove material. Now, like I said earlier, we want it to go about 1/2 to 2/3 of the way in with no tools. And this is where it's critical in keeping you from breaking your tenon. You're really going to have to use some patience here. So let's go ahead and try one more test fit. We're going to push this in by finger. You see we stop about 1/2 of the way in. We're going to want to go ahead and take this off and do just a little bit more sanding. Just go ahead and get your rifle out of the way and go ahead and grab your piece of sandpaper and just keep at it. It's going to take just a little bit of patience, but the end result is going to be very nice. Getting a bit closer. So now you're looking at the back side here, and you can see that we've sanded quite a bit away into those little dimples. That's showing we've removed some material. So let's go ahead and try to test fit this thing yet again. I'll give her a push by finger. There we are. We're about 1/2 to 2/3 of the way. Now it's not incredibly loose, but it's got a good deal of resistance still. You can see I'm pushing back and forth here. But now what we're going to need to do, you can see I've got a little block there to support my barrel. We're going to roll this thing over on the side, and we're going to take a non-marring hammer. That non-marring hammer is going to keep from marking everything up. You can see this one, that one's actually a flooring hammer, but it's got little polyurethane snubbers that keep from scratching your guns. So now let's go ahead and run this thing in. I'm using my fingers to feel. It looks like we've got it about 1/2. Looks about even. So I am liking that. Since I've opted for the Costa Handguard, I'm going to go ahead and remove this while we don't have anything in the way. We don't want to swing hammers while we have a brand new handguard in place, because I'm going to be using the gator rails. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. That is a very simple proposition. We're just going to lay this, support our barrel, and then we're just going to go ahead and... So now we're going to double check and make sure we have the correct handguard. This is the Costa Handguard, and it is marked MT. Now, we're also going to make sure of our orientation. We get lots of 9:30 or midnight emails where guys have taken and turned this thing around backwards, and they say that they swear they've got the wrong thing because the screw hole doesn't line up with the tenon. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to place our flange here toward the receiver, and our QDs, which is also our open end, our QD sockets right here for the sling, are going to go forward. Now you notice we line up. So let's go ahead and put our handguard in here. That one slid right in perfectly. Sometimes if they have just a little bit of resistance because of a manufacturer's tolerance, you might need to take your non-marring hammer and give it a little bump here, making sure not to mess up your finish. But this one slid right in, so we are good to go. What we need out of our hardware baggie now is our Loctite, our 2 screws, and our 2 offset washers. Now this Loctite, we will apply a little bit to our threads here before we insert them, and those offset washers serve a purpose. So what we have here, we have the 4570, and it has a heavy profile barrel, so what we want is that offset washer will actually change the cant of where this sits, and you want this line to dissect this barrel nicely. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the holes of our washers and we're going to place them in the upward position. You see how that's pointing upward there? So we're going to take our Loctited screws. We'll just add a little bit of Loctite there. This one I'm not doing any Loctite because this is kind of a temporary installation. We're doing a little bit of R&D right now, so I'm not doing that on camera. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our little included Allen key and we're going to go ahead and run this on down. So let's run that in, and we're not going fully tight just yet. So let's go ahead and roll this over and look at this other side. Let's take our offset washer, and again, you can see we're going to go belly down. So this belly is going to go toward the bottom of the handguard because we want the hole to be up. That way our handguard dissects our barrel correctly. And again, we're not going fully tight. We're just going just enough to get it in there. So now here we're ready for the magazine tube and follower. And you remember I told you about this bump in the mag tube earlier. This is so that that round can come in and go in because the 45-70 round is rather large. But right here in the front of it, you got a big hole and a little hole. It also keeps you from putting this on the wrong side. But just for cheating's sake, we're going to go on the non-ejection port side and go ahead and plug this thing in. So we'll slide this down the handguard and get her in there. Once it seats, you'll absolutely know it. There we go. Now we are in. So this time we're going to take our spring, which we have set aside. We're going to set it into our mag tube. Now we're going to take our magazine end cap, and of course that magazine end cap has got two different size holes in it. The big hole is going to go pointing toward the top of the barrel. So let's get the rest of this in here so that we can get this magazine end cap tube in here. Now do be careful, that spring will come out. We are currently under the pressure of the spring. So we want to go ahead and take our magazine end cap. Alright, so now our magazine tube and end cap are in. We're going to take our factory screw. This factory screw is of course factory. It is not included in the Ranger Point Precision hardware. We're going to go ahead and poke that down in there. Then we're going to take our appropriately sized screwdriver. We're going to go ahead and run that in righty-tighty, or clockwise. So now that is secured. So let's move on to the next part. For this part of the install, we're going to need our 4 set screws and our Allen key from the hardware baggie. Let's set these down and I'm going to show you where they go. Right here and right here. We've got a set screw hole here on the rear by the receiver. It goes in on an angle. Then we've got a hole right here. There is also on the other side a corresponding hole. So 2 screws for each side. Now, at this point, we would take Loctite and we go ahead and put Loctite on the threads of these set screws for a permanent installation. Like I said on this one, I'm doing R&D with this gun, so there's still some research and development, so we're not making anything completely permanent at this point. But now, let's go ahead and take our little Allen key, and let's go ahead and run these in. Righty-tighty does the trick. Now on these rears, they do go in at an angle, and I like to use this Allen key because it doesn't give me too much leverage to cross thread if I am inclined to cross thread. If you use a big tool, you're likely to go ahead and get cross threaded because you didn't get the right angle. But of course, clockwise yet again. And then let's go to the other side and rinse, wash, repeat. Wash. Repeat. If you have the M-LOK handguard, go ahead and take and tighten everything up. You are done. If you have the Costa handguard, we have left everything loose on purpose because we need to put our gator rails on the top of our Costa handguard here. Now on this one, I'm going to keep this one kind of light. I just want one gator rail for now. So I mentioned earlier that we didn't torque our screws. If your screws got torqued on your handguard for your Costa, you're going to need to release that tension, because what that tension does is a very precise fit, and it won't always go on if you already have the screws pre-tensioned. So let's go ahead and remove this from the package and let's get this installed. Included in the package, you're going to get 2 Allen keys, you're going to get 4 large screws, and then you're going to get 4 smaller screws. And these are Allen sets that are going to be jack screws. These jack screws help you level the Costa handguard if you're having any type of alignment issues. But now, with that being said, these jack screws, if you go to remove that gator rail, don't untighten these big-headed ones first. Loosen the small ones first, because these, by the time these get pushed down on the gator and these have got the gator clamped, these cause a great deal of force and you may strip the heads out of these screws. Now it's time to choose the orientation of your gator rails. The cool thing about this Costa handguard is the fact that the gator rails can be turned forward, they can be turned backwards. You can use this in conjunction with a receiver rail. There are multiple setups that you can use. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my gator rail backwards over the receiver so that I can use a red dot. So now we've got, like I said before, everything is loose, everything is not tensioned. We're going to take our gator rail and we're going to lay it in here. Now you see that goes right in, and at home you probably just felt that precision snap. At this point in the install, we're going to need our Loctite and our 4 big-headed screws. And the 4 big-headed screws are going to go into these inlets here that have room for the heads to go in. So let's apply our Loctite to the threads, and let's get our Allen key and go ahead and start running these home. So now don't tighten this all the way up yet. What you want to do is go ahead and get all 4 screws started before you start running it home. The next hardware we need are our jack screws and the smaller Allen key. The only holes left for them to go into are pretty daggum obvious. And put them into the remaining holes. So there goes screw 1, screw 2, screw 3, and jack screw 4. So now the 1 gator rail is installed. If you have 2, go ahead and duplicate that. If you have a receiver rail, the spec for it is simply use Loctite on the threads and then hand tight. So that receiver rail, 1 gator rail, and an additional will give you full Picatinny all the way down. But like I said, keeping this one nice and light, and I'm just going to put me a nice little red dot right there on the rear of it. So now at this point, you are free to go ahead and tighten these 6 screws. You have your 2 that go into the tenon, you have your 2 that go off and touch on the front of the barrel here, and the 2 back here at the receiver. So you can go ahead and finish torquing everything up and get it all nice and tight and ready to go. Torque spec on that is just hand tight. The Loctite will do the rest. So we absolutely appreciate you following along to this video to a T, but if you have any issues, make sure to go to our support email. There's also a contact form at the top of the website. We've got pictures, videos, diagrams, and installation videos just like this to send straight to you. Y'all have a wonderful day. We'll see you next video.